mentorship in certain approaches works because in certain industries it works better. Like let's say business consulting. This is how I scaled my business. It will probably work for you because you're in the same industry and so forth. But in trading, there's too much individualism. There's too much individual psychology and so forth, where it makes more sense to give them the tools themselves and the first principles to arrive to their own conclusions and know how to look at their data, know how to build their own models and so forth. What do you believe are the first principles for a trader to focus their attention on, to build themselves up, not relying on a mentor?
I think that you need to really address the thought pattern of who you're learning from, right? So you can build within yourself, right? Joe Dispenza says it perfectly. Your personality is creating your personal reality, right? So if your personality is broken, that's just going to create a broken personal reality, right? So I don't want traders becoming a version of me. I want them to be the version of themselves. So for example, I'm very good at high up in the run of being very aggressive. Some people, their personality may not be suited to that. I don't want them to try to replicate me. I'll give them the tools and the infrastructure to trade the way that I trade, but within the parameters of who they are. Like some people, as you've probably met, they're just very conservative by nature. And it's not actually within their interest to now try to be an aggressive person. Be good at what you're good at. It might mean you have to sacrifice a little bit of risk to reward, that's fine, but you'll be consistent. So I'd rather you be consistent than trying to chase who I am. Analyze my thought process on how I'm doing things, whether it be my routines, whether it be how I think about risk, how I think about capital partitioning, how I think about utilizing your money for leverage, what you're actually going to do with trade. And I always think beyond that. I don't actually see myself as someone who is teaching someone to trade per se. I see myself as someone who's teaching someone how to build wealth, and trading is the vehicle to do that.
Right.
Like my passion doesn't lie in candlesticks.
It doesn't end there, yes.
That's why recently we launched out the mastermind that you referred to as the property fund. So essentially, the property fund is an avenue where people can build passive income. Because I see it like this: if I only teach you to trade, I fail you. Because if I disappear in 5 years and decide, look, don't want to do this anymore, then what? You've been reliant on me. I've guided you. You're probably going to lose a sense of the assurances of what you said to build up that independence. But eventually you do need good people around you, and there's going to be situations that happen that you don't know how to navigate and deal with yourself. So I thought, how do I truly serve these students that is going to stand the test of time? I need to teach them how to actually use their money correctly. And I would say I'm more passionate about that. It just so happens that the strategy helps them get there. So with our property fund, my brother's been a property developer for like 22 years. I've been in property. So I thought, how could we actually help these people earn passive income that's way more than an index fund, better than dollar cost averaging, and just get like real sites they can go to in person and see. That's going to give them the option at higher levels in our funded traders club. They're able to, we've never got 500K. You don't think it's a problem until you have money, is what I always say to them, right? You don't think your money's at risk. It's because your money's not at risk. You don't have enough for it to be at risk. But as soon as you've got capital, that needs to go somewhere. And this idea of thinking, well, I'll just trade it. You can't just trade all your money. You're going to need something like multiple sources of income. So that was kind of my hedge of...
There's a topic I'd like to touch on, but before we pivot into that, because I feel like there's a can of worms.
Of course,
there's a couple of things I want to touch on to finalize, let's say, more of the trading side. So there are sorts of things that are in our control and out of our control. For example, the market is out of our control. There's nothing we can do. Despite what we try to do, the market is going to do whatever it wants. Despite what your smart money tells you, the market will do as it pleases. But there are certain things that are totally in our control, and it's limited to a few things. Off the top of my head, we have our risk. That's something we can control and we choose to modify. Our profit taking is another thing we can choose to control. Risk to reward is something based on our setup. We can see where what kind of risk reward approach we want. Our win rates, something I didn't think was in my control. I thought the win rate is given to me based on my approach, but I realized, no, I can choose my win rates. If I take a more aggressive approach to the market, if I want higher trade volume, my win rate is naturally going to come down because I can't take the best setups because they're not as frequent. So then I realized, okay, win rates is something in my control. And then if you model it out, you can choose your win rates. So I keep it in a select buffer. And if my win rates are going lower, I just eliminate hedge trades, counter trend trades, and my win rate will come back up. And at the other side, if my win rate is higher than my range, well, I can lower it because I want to increase trade frequency, and you can optimize everything. There's probably a couple other controllable variables that I maybe don't remember right now. Oh, your strategy, for example, the confluences you choose, the trade models you have. So out of these controlled variables that we have in the market, and maybe you can think of a couple more, what are the ones that are highest yield, or what are the ones that are going to be that 80-20, where if you focus on these one or two things, that's your strongest bet as a trader?
I would say your strongest bet is going to be lots of things that you already covered, because those are really the core of what you're talking about that you need to have in place. And then you need some form of routine that's going to allow you to stick to that. So it's going to be actually everything else connected to that. Okay. I don't think a trader can perform with this, laptop lifestyle. Right, because essentially you being a great trader is actually being quite methodical. So let's say if you're a session trader, you're saying, right, I don't take trades out of session. Well, then if you're flying all over the world and you've bought into that image, you're going to mess up at some point and it will affect you. So it's prioritizing the things that, what is going to help me be a peak performer? And if that means that, right, I need discipline before I go to sleep. Like, how many traders do you hear talk about, I've got a really solid evening routine? Because they're not thinking about these things, because they don't think that they connect. They think they can just wake up every day and just be who they are and it's going to work. But it doesn't, because they make emotional decisions. So if you're controlling your risk, you've got a good trading plan, it's as black and white as possible, you know your profit taking. You mentioned about counter trend trades. I have a model on counter trend as well, which I will only aim for a certain risk to reward. I will cap it at 5-1. And if it doesn't have the room for a 5-1, I won't entertain it. I'll say, right. So I've got those metrics in place as well, which is why I often say people confuse what we do as it's like guesswork, when the reality is it's actually very rule-based, what we do. But the routines part is the most underlooked thing that plays such a vital role. I spoke about this on Riz's podcast, and I'll just mention it now because it's very quick. First 15 minutes of the day dictates most of your day. Most people wake up thinking about their problems, they're stressed out, thinking about what they got to do. If you could just control the first 15 minutes of your day and lean into different things, as a practical tip for the people listening, you would see a direct influence of how your day is, and that would influence you on how you trade. So if you're trading London session only, for example, well, then that's probably pretty important, especially if you're in the UK or Europe time zone. You want to make sure you wake up and the first 15 minutes, you're not thinking about your phone, you're not thinking about what you've got to do. You're just thinking about what you're grateful for, what you're excited to do. And if you just control that thought just in those first 15 minutes, you'll massively see a difference in just how you operate. Because most traders, they're in a bad mood. They're looking at the trade like, how do you think that's not going to affect you taking a trade in that London session?
You know, Mark, that was something that I used to hear on the internet, and I always used to think that's wishy-washy advice. Like it sounds like that hippie stuff. And then I read into it a little bit more, and it was a guy basically saying when you take a decision that was wrong and you knew it was wrong, and it's only when you've left that moment and you look back and you think, why did I do that? That's very analogous to a trader that knows they shouldn't have taken that trade, but they took it anyway, and they call it revenge trading. Well, they say, or they're thinking that was a psychological problem that they just arrived to, which it could be. It could be a trauma or something. It could be anything.
Of course.
But there's also that just thing you said of how you started your day, and I forgot where I got it from, but it was a guy saying, when you wake up and you reach for your phone and you see some emails or a message, you've already got a microdose of stress, something to attend to, something on your mind. And then you get up and then, your partner's in a bad mood, and then that rubs on you, another micro stress. Or you're running late, so you got to drop the kids off, they're running late, another micro stress. And he's like, if you accumulate all these micro stresses along the day, by the time you've arrived to your desk and you're about to take a trade, you've accumulated this, and you might be at a threshold where you might now take an irrational decision. And then when you only calm down and look back, like, why did I do that? I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's psychological issues, or maybe it was just your day. It was just how you started your day. So I'm in agreement with that.